Propertyology regards right now as a very exciting time for investing in Australian real estate. There are some fantastic opportunities that Propertyology can help you take advantage of before buyers re-emerge from their coronavirus cocoons. Propertyology has a national focus. Now more than ever, experience and knowledge are the most valuable currency. Propertyology has that in spades. To find out how Propertyology's multi-award-winning buyers agents can help you prosper, contact them now at propertyology.com.au.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show with your host, Phil Tarrant.
Okay, everyone, how are you going? Thanks for joining us today on the Smart Property Investment Show. I get a real kick out of recording this, and it's a real privilege for me to sort of chat with a whole bunch of people from all over the spectrum of property. You know, there's no doubt that the conversations I've been having recently have been dominated by COVID-19 and what does it all mean, and I'd like to think I'm pretty well read. I watch the television as well, and the coverage I'm seeing and the different opinions about life in Australia in terms of property is very different. You have polarizing opinions right now from people with their heads in their hands thinking there's going to be a 40+% drop in property prices through to others who are more conservative and acknowledging the long-term benefits of property investment in Australia and how different markets will perform over this coming period. But the fact that as an asset class, property, irrespective of time or market, always shows some very good opportunities. So we get into that in the Smart Property Investment Show, and we have those conversations from right across Australia. Today, I want to drill down into the Brisbane market. We haven't touched it for a little while. A lot of the commentary most recently has been dominated on Sydney and Melbourne. So we like to chat about some of these inverted commas forgotten markets, but Brisbane definitely isn't a forgotten market for me. I've got probably a third of my portfolio up in Brisbane. I've been waiting patiently for Brisbane to shine. It has very different dynamics. You know, having a lot of conversations with people up in Brisbane about the market dynamics at the moment and how supply and demand has changed, and it works in different environment to the Sydney. So we're going to get stuck into that today. What's happening up in Brisbane, some of the issues and concerns around COVID-19, whether there's any foreign investment impacts of COVID-19, and just how affordability up in Brisbane may be an enabler for a lot of property investors who may be priced out of the Sydney and Melbourne markets. This is way beyond my pay grade, these type of conversations. So I've asked two people into the studio to have a chat with me, Edward Madden, Director of Forum Partners, and Brett Greensill from McGraw Estate Agents. Gentlemen, how are you going? You well?
Very well, thanks, great. Phil. Good to be speaking on a lovely afternoon here in Sydney.
Yes, it's great. So you're Sydney-based, Edward, and Brett, you're Brisbane-based. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
That's interesting. So we'll get a little bit into the partnership that you have, but I would imagine nearly everyone listening to this podcast would have heard of McGraw at some point in time. Very visible figurehead who's been, you know, synonymous with property in Australia. But Forum Partners, Edward, I might kick off there. Can you give me a bit of an idea of what Forum Partners does? I've sort of done some reading and stuff on you guys, so I've got a pretty good understanding. But if you can answer that based on some of the international stuff you do and how you might be bringing a bit of a flavour for how it works internationally here in Australia.
Yeah, look, absolutely. So Forum Partners has been investing in Asia since 2004. So we've had offices headquartered in Hong Kong, and we've invested in our markets, which are Australia, China, Korea and Japan have been our key markets. So since 2004, we've invested about $1.3 billion across 45 investments in each of those markets that I said, and we're also across different asset classes. So we're quite opportunistic in our approach. So where we see mispriced asset classes and potential value, we'll usually jump on those types of opportunities. So we've invested from student housing in New Zealand through to industrial in China, office in Japan, and then just recently in Australia, we saw an opportunity in the middle of last year, just prior to the election. There was a bit of dislocation in the market, I suppose, mainly driven by the credit markets and the APRA investigations around banking practices. And we saw some concerns not too dissimilar to what we're seeing now in the COVID market, where there was sort of views that prices would be depressed in the residential market across Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane as a result of the credit market dislocation. But really what we did see when we made our investment at that point, we thought it was the bottom of the market, was that we saw a good rally in prices, particularly in Sydney and Brisbane, where they're up 10%, but also in Brisbane, which prices have held steady despite sort of record levels of supply. So, yeah, really today I wanted just to give your audience and your listeners a bit of a feel around, you know, what our experience has been in investing in those specific markets, and then sort of talk about Brisbane a little bit further, because it's been a really promising investment for us we think. And moving forward, we think the dynamics are well set for a good recovery there in Brisbane.
Well, let's hope so. I think there's a lot of people invested in Brisbane and all states doing well through this current environment, but every single property market moves in cycles. So, Edward, you're at the end of property investment that a lot of property investors don't actually think about. Most people think property investment is, a mum and a dad buying one or two investment properties to plan for wealth creation and all sort of stuff. You're at the other spectrum of property investment where you guys are spending big bucks on big infrastructure asset acquisitions, and you realize the value you have in those in different ways than a typical mum and dad investor would do. Is that a fair sort of statement?
Yeah, look, but I think there are some similarities. Obviously, everyone likes to get in at the right point of the market and feel as though they're getting value in their purchase. The other consideration across, your commercial, industrial, retail as well is yield, so constant income. And certainly the residential markets in Australia provide that, particularly in Brisbane. I think, we're seeing gross rental yields sort of up around 5-6%. So that continued sort of recurring income is definitely attractive. So a point or a juncture where you feel as though you'd like to upgrade your property or at the right time to sell, given your situation, you'd like to be able to think that you can pick the market correctly in terms of the top of the market as well. So that's really, there's no magic trick there. It's really, buy low, sell high, but also, you need to be confident in the market dynamics when that right time is to sell. So timing is critical.
Yeah, it's an important point you make there. And obviously you might get a few more zeros in the type of stuff that you and your business does, but the basic philosophy to wealth creation is the same, whether or not it's a one-bedroom investment in, all the way through to, whether it's a full-scale, apartment block development or acquisition. You want to buy at the right time with the right insights, with the right education for the right purpose, with the right team to make sure you can realize the asset that you're acquiring. So big or small, it's fundamentally the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I think speaking to a lot of institutional investors that are interested in the various Asian markets, there's always that saying that, they'd rather write $100 million checks because you've got to do exactly the same work and due diligence to write a $100 million check is what you need to do to write $1 million check. So, that's something that's, right from that institutional level down to sort of your mum and dad investors that are looking for sort of the same outcomes.
It's good philosophy. You touched on some of the other asset classes. So do you cross right over the whole real estate asset classes from, whether it's office or industrial or retail? There's obviously resi property, you've got houses, units, all this sort of stuff, or scale investments versus individual properties. Do you cover the whole gamut, or do you also move into asset classes outside of real estate?
No, so we're solely focused on real estate,
okay.
But our mandate is certainly to invest in all real estate sectors across those markets that I described. So Japan, Korea, China, down here in Australia.
Okay.
Within Asia.
Yeah. And I want to get into resi stuff up in Brizzy. It's a big focus. One of the reasons why we've asked Brett to come and join us. But what's your background? Are you a sort of always been in institutional sort of assets type of things, or you come from a real estate background?
Yeah, so I come from a real estate background. So I worked on the lending side when I started my career. So I worked for Westpac in their commercial property finance team. So that was looking at office investments, looking to make loans as well to residential developers. And then with Forum Partners, who I've been with for the last 10 years, I've spent 10 years up in Hong Kong, and I just recently returned back to Australia as well. So
okay.
Bit of a broad brush of experience during my time at Forum.
Did you avoid some of the madness that's been happening in Hong Kong semi-recently with a bit of distress and disruption?
Yeah, so it's been pretty interesting since the middle of last year when the protests first kicked off, and it's obviously pretty topical at the moment with what's been going on, and it's escalating between the US and China. So look, yeah, I mean, I was certainly caught up in it last year. I remember watching the Rugby Union World Cup final, and we're watching in a bar, and I was with my wife and daughter, and there was actually a tear gas canister that was shot by one of the police officers at the crowd. And the crowd kicked it down the road, and it's come into the actual bar that we're watching it at.
Okay.
And then, the tear gas has started coming up into the bar, so everyone had to run into the bathroom. So, yeah, it's pretty hectic up there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's really just kicked off again over the past couple of weeks, just as it looked as though they had some good news around, their response to COVID. So,
well, I guess whether you're a mum and dad investor, inverted commas, or institutional, but there's a whole bunch of stuff outside of your control, and civil unrest is probably one that does have an impact on property markets. So, thankfully in Australia, it's not a key consideration when you're probably looking to invest in property, and how that plays up in Brisbane. I know sometimes they can get we're recording this in Sydney, the north of the border, they can get a bit anxious when we're beating them in the football. But look, I want to get in the Brizzy bit. I won't go to a break quickly. We'll be back in a moment.
Love property? The current Buyer's Agent of the Year and Director of Pure Property Investment, Paul Glossop, does too. And right now, he's offering you the chance to secure his best-selling book, A Surfer's Guide to Property Investing, absolutely free. Simply jump on Pure Property Investment's Facebook page, hit the message button and type Smart Property to claim your free book today.
Welcome back, everyone. Phil Tarrant, host of the Smart Property Investment Show, with Edward Madden, Director, Forum Partners, and Brett Greensill from McGraw Estate Agents. I've been chatting a little bit about Forum Partners and how not all investors are created equal. Sometimes they're large institutions that go about looking to realise the value of investing in residential, commercial, industrial real estate, but by and large, the fundamentals are the same. So, Edward, I want to bring Brett into the chat, but can you tell me a little about what's the relationship between Forum Partners and McGraw Estate Agents up in Brisbane?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned earlier, we acquired a portfolio of residential apartments in Brisbane, Melbourne and Sydney, and we've engaged McGrath as our leasing and property. So they've done a great job in leasing up the units. And then we're also looking to progressively sell down some of the units as well as part of our strategy from the investment. So they've handled the sales side as well. So they've worked with us both in Melbourne and in Brisbane. So that's how my relationship started with Brett and McGrath.
Okay, nice one. And Brett, how many properties have you got under management with the relationship you have with Forum Partners? So property manager first and packaging all that up. So, we'll have a chat about that first. And I want to get a bit of an understanding about the actual assets themselves and what the market's like to be selling them. Tell us a little bit about the type of people you're attracting into these properties at the moment.
Well, I got to compliment them. I think it did very well to choose Brisbane and very well to choose Newstead specifically. It's a market that I've worked in for myself for nearly 20 years. I started selling property there for when Macquarie Bank was the seller of a building just down the road from where this one is. So what I think Newstead offers, and Brisbane in particular offers for investors, is what has attracted them to invest here, the stability of the market. I think that the urban development over a long period of time there, which has regenerated some industrial estates and commercial spaces into a whole new hub with integrated services and access to CBD and airport and hospitals and so forth right there at your doorstep, really makes this location key. And following on for that, of course, is why it is very attractive to tenants and the right sort of tenants. And these buildings are new buildings, but they're in now established areas. They're not greenfield sites. So there's the life and the commercial buildings that are around that are attracting people to work there, and they can access them very easily. And naturally, of course, if you go one step further, this is why when they do come to sell them, a significant number of them are sold to owner-occupiers or potentially even ex-tenants. It's reasonably common for that to occur. And that's been a trend now well established over the last 10 to 15 years. It's not something that just happened now. And, Brisbane, if I could just say one more point, Brisbane in early 2020 was showing all the signs of a recovery, everything going for us with interest rates and the market. Then coronavirus turned up. But even so, I don't know that you ever get it wrong if you choose the right spot. And so, full credit to them for doing so.
So, Brett, you've been in that market for quite some time. Can you give me some sense for Newstead at the moment, as in its position in the city, why its location for people to be looking in, and just, a bit of an idea about the size and scale of the opportunity you have there with Forum Partners?
Newstead, really, I would describe it as one of the top 3 suburbs to invest in Brisbane. And for an investor's perspective, where you're looking for both capital growth as well as return, because over time, the investment is likely to transition to owner-occupiers as owners, and including Forum Partners, once they sell down their investment to individuals, is a very attractive investment for owner-occupiers to buy. Location, I remember when Newstead was sort of industrial wasteland 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and over time, the local, state and Commonwealth governments have done is reinvest in a whole infrastructure to create an urban development program, which has run for some decades now. And we're really at the benefit end of that investment. So we get all of the benefit of the infrastructure having delivered commercial and retail spaces so that residential towers such as these are built. And these are in a tower of about 600 apartments, but there's a number of residential towers surrounding them that the people want to live there. It's got everything that they could possibly want. So to answer your question specifically, I think Newstead is about as good as it gets in Brisbane.
What sort of people are attracted to live there? Is it your professionals? Because I imagine you got investors who are buying these assets for for renting them out, but owner occupiers as well. Is it mainly people working in the city?
Well, yeah, although we're all sort of working from home now, so many of these things have changed. But yeah, the demographic of the people who move here is high quality because you've got everything going for it. And in terms of tenants, let's start with the tenants first. And you'd be surprised to find a broad range of the demographic. It's not just young people, but a wide range, particularly people trialing an apartment for the first time. So if you look at the average house price in Brisbane, out in the suburbs that sell a house for $500,000, the median house price in Brisbane is just under $500,000, and then move to, say, a 2-bedroom apartment in Newstead, you'll be spending around about $500,000. So you often find these people are trialing what it's like to live in an apartment for the first time before they buy. So this is another reason why an investment strategy like Forum Partners is wise, because the tenants, a significant number of them will transition from tenants to the actual owners over time. When it comes to working from home, all of the commercial and industrial sites around Brisbane are easily accessible because you're more or less halfway between the CBD and the airport, really.
And for you, Edward, considering this investment, and it's a reasonable investment you've made in Newstead, what do you see back at that point in time you made that investment versus where we are right now? And Brisbane's gone through this supply and demand, particularly in apartments over the last period of time. I think a lot of that now has been swallowed up. The apartment market's looking pretty good up there at the moment. But what did you see? What did you like? And now that you have these assets, how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, look, absolutely. So a lot of the questions that we got from our investment committee and from our investors was the level of supply, particularly in the inner Brisbane suburbs over 16, 17. So on average, you saw about 8,000 apartments per year coming online in Brisbane, which was unprecedented. So what you've seen is there was a lot of stock in the market over the past 2 years, and that's slowly been getting absorbed via sales. So this is completed. The developer may have not been able to sell off the plan, so they've rented it out and then they're progressively selling down to the market. Not too dissimilar to what our strategy is. So we're now at a juncture prior to COVID in particular where a lot of that stock overhang had actually been absorbed and we were starting to see a recovery phase. And a lot of analysts were saying that the Brisbane market, given the strong net migration, particularly from the southern states, as well as being the beneficiary of, the huge foreign immigrants as well that were coming into Australia over the past few years, which was really building up the demand side. We were starting to see a market that was potentially going to be tipping into undersupply. And obviously when you've got undersupply, the leading effect is going to be lower vacancy rates. And we saw that in Brisbane just prior to COVID where it was below 2%. It's crept up like all markets over the past couple of months. Yeah, obviously we have lower vacancy rates as you get to a situation where a lot of that supply has been absorbed and you haven't got as much supply coming online. And obviously a lower vacancy rate in the market just prior to COVID is a really good, obviously, dynamic when trying to drive your rents and your return, with obviously yields being a function of both price and the rentals you're achieving. So we were starting to see that really play out well across our portfolio in Brisbane. So, and we rented out 45 of those within a couple of months. So there was really strong tenant demand. And then we deliberately left the other 15 vacant as a potential sale to owner occupiers who may have a preference to buy, a close to brand new unit as opposed to buying a rental unit. So again, on the rental side, very attractive.
I'm really interested, and we'll go to a break beforehand, but when we come back with about what should be sort of a checklist for you who are an interstate investor or a local investor looking to invest in apartments in Brisbane, what you're looking for. We'll cover that when we come back for break, back in a moment.
Worried about making the wrong choice with your next investment? You're not alone. If you truly want to become the master of your own lifestyle design through real estate, then you need to speak with Buyers Agents, who'll help you acquire cash flow positive properties in high growth areas with value add potential, so you can create more freedom in your life. Visit dash.com.au/SPI.
Welcome back, everyone. Phil Tarrant, host of the Smart Property Investment Show, with Edward Madden from Forum Partners and Brett Greensill from McGraw Estate Agents, chatting all things Brisbane property markets in particular. We sort of had a bit of a chat before the break, Edward, around the supply and demand and those market drivers in the apartment market in Brisbane over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. A lot of that has been picked up right now. I'm hearing a lot more positivity out of the apartment market up in Brisbane. If you're looking to invest in apartments in Brisbane, whether you're a local Queenslander or in a state, I invest in Brisbane. I live in Sydney. Not all areas, not all apartments are created equal. What would you be sort of having as a key priority when you're considering investment opportunities?
Yeah, sure. So, as I said, the supply was really the big concern, but there's obviously other factors that you're going to take into account. So for us, in terms of Brisbane, the appeal was a massive amount of infrastructure works that are going on currently. So you've got the new casino development, you've got the Cross River Rail. Brett alluded to the Gasworks project closer to the Newstead area. There's the redevelopment of the exhibition and showgrounds in Bowen Hills just next door. So that type of investment into the market gave us huge confidence. And then really our focus was looking at quality build as well. Because we were acquiring completed apartments, it was important to look at the quality of the build. So this particular project was developed and constructed by Hutchinson's, which is obviously a very well-renowned building company, particularly in Queensland. And back at the juncture when we made the investment, it was quite topical around, obviously, the quality of build with the Mascot Towers issue and Opal Towers down in Sydney. So that was another key consideration. Yeah, and then obviously proximity to city and employment hubs. So within Newstead and that inner northern area of Brisbane, it's well serviced by the train line, which is being redeveloped as well, the metro line. You've also got buses straight in, and it's an easy walk into the Brisbane CBD. All those factors, we took into account when choosing this investment.
And when you think of COVID-19, and this has thrown property on its head, it's thrown everything on its head, not only Australia, but globally, Woodall, your personal view, I guess, connected with that around property as an asset class in Australia for long-term growth, and that'll be growth and also yield. I'll probably get you to answer that from a residential perspective, but then also a commercial perspective. We have a lot of commercial investors listening to this podcast as well.
Yeah, sure. So look, there's a lot of interesting data out at the moment around the recovery and performance of the residential property market post different financial crises. So in the 90s, with the recession we had to have, obviously on the back of the GFC. And in all the capital cities across Australia, the median house price and unit price was higher, obviously, than what it was at that juncture of the crisis. So, we think that it'll play out in a similar fashion. And what gives us real belief there is really, the fantastic job on a global comparative basis that the Australian government and the Australian people have done with combating COVID-19, touch wood. We don't have a second wave. To date, it looks promising. So, I think that makes Australia look like an even more attractive place to invest. And, a key driver, particularly in the Melbourne markets, and there's been a lot of discussion around this, is just the effect of immigration, which has been trending at about 250,000 people each year, which accounts for about 60% of the population growth in Australia. Now, this year on the back of COVID, those numbers are looking like they're only going to be about 30,000. So you've had a huge reduction. So, that could disrupt the market in the short term. We feel as though certainly coming into 21, we're trying to push that immigration targets again, to try and drive that growth and job creation. So we think that will support property prices. On the demand side, obviously that's going to be an important driver. And I think for us, when considering investment, the supply side, as I spoke about earlier, was very the same for all markets, not just Brisbane, which has been coming off sort of record high levels of supply. But I think the disruption caused by COVID and the dislocation has meant that you're likely to see a lot of muted projects that were about to be launched no longer come to market, which means that over the course of 21, 22 and 23, we may have a situation where there's a lot lower supply just at that point in time when hopefully we're seeing the population side, which is obviously going to be a good thing for residential equity. On the commercial, retail and logistics front as well, I think obviously logistics looks like a very interesting sector at the moment. On the back of e-commerce and people becoming more accustomed to shopping online, particularly while spending so much time at home. So, that's obviously an investment class that will be getting a lot of attention. I think that retail, its experience is also well placed. So if it's got fresh food markets and that entertainment element, which is drawing people in, to spend time with the kids, not just to go in and do your shopping. I think, that boom around bricks and mortar retail, I think, there are opportunities there. And then on the office side, there's obviously going to be some changes to the way that people approach the office. And you had this trend over the past, 5 to 10 years of hot desking. That's probably something that's going to dissipate pretty quickly. And we'll see a change where, a lot of people are saying there's going to be less demand for office floor space because more people are going to be working from home. The contrarian view there is that you'll actually need more office space because on a per square metre basis, each employee in the office is going to need more space. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of plays out over the next 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, there's a lot of dynamics there. And to your point around migration, it's got to drop quite a lot here in Sydney and Melbourne. But in many ways, Brisbane's probably buttressed quite a lot from that. Most of your migration sort of interstate, isn't it? People coming up from south of the border. Is that the way you're seeing it, Brett?
Yeah, absolutely. We could certainly get the border open, although that's probably a little political, so that they can come here. That would be helpful. But to your point, I think, about what COVID has had, the effect it's had, I think the magnifying glass analogy works very well for me, in that if the property is very good, and particularly lifestyle apartments, this seems to have exaggerated that, and there seems to be now interest in those properties compared with those that perhaps weren't very good investments or haven't shone out. There seems to be even less interest. That's certainly what we're seeing on the ground at our open houses and at our normal residential real estate.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what the sort of ground truth was up there. Are you finding buyers with their heads held high and opportunistic with good attitudes toward properties? Everyone's still sort of sitting there going, the sky's falling in and it's the worst time ever to be in real estate?
No, the sky falling in people went away a long time ago. I think most people who are out and about are absolutely delighted to be out and about again, coming to our open houses in droves. In fact, the first weekend, of course, you might recall we had 6 only. We didn't have very many people coming those weekends. And then last week, up to 10 people, I'm terribly sorry to say that you're not allowed in, because we've already got 10 people in. So I can't tell you how happy we were to say that, even though it was the coldest day in 98 years. But I think, to answer the question, I think more people will be looking more carefully at the future. I think people will want to set themselves up for the future again. And I think that comes to lifestyle and location as much as to anything else. And so the inner city of Brisbane Ring is very attractive lifestyle. It offers everything, certainly the ability to do away with the car and access to restaurants and shops and boutiques, easy access to public transport, the airport, when that gets back up and running, of course it will, and then all of the other infrastructure that we talked about, from the Queen's Wharf, which is the biggest investment in Brisbane for some time, Cross River Rail, Howard Smith Wharves, the list goes on.
It does go on. And for you, Edward, I imagine you're thinking towards the future. What's you're going to be sticking around the Brizzy market, do you think, with foreign partners? What else do you like at the moment?
Yeah, so look, I think experience in Brisbane has been a good one to date. So obviously, there's been a lot of conjecture with the onset of COVID, tenant retention rates and increases in vacancies. So what we're saying is, we've made a real game partnership with McGrath to work with our tenants. So, we've probably lost 3 or 4 out of the 45 tenants up in Brisbane. So, we'll be focused on working with our tenants to make sure that they're happy. We're accommodating them on the rental front. We can come out of this together as both two happy parties. So really for us at the moment in Brisbane, it's around tenant retention. And then in terms of other markets, down in Melbourne, it's probably a different demographic and slightly different price point in our investment down in Melbourne. So Brisbane, you're looking at sort of 420 to 480,000 for a 1-bedder and sort of 500 to 600 for a 2-bedder. So more targeted your first home buyers, your investors, and as Brett said earlier, people coming in from the suburbs. Down in Melbourne, we acquired some units in Toorak. So, the median house price there is in excess of $1 million. Slightly different price point, targeted at downsizers. So people selling in, the leaf of Melbourne and moving into an apartment for obviously all the convenience that offers. And obviously with that demographic, sort of tend to be sort of 55 plus. It's been a difficult time getting those people through the door because obviously they're the most susceptible to COVID. Challenges in different markets. Certainly see that, if we manage as well over the next 6 months, there's certainly green shoots to come on the other side.
Yeah, it's one thing you are guaranteed with real estate. There's always change and markets do move. And thanks, guys, for sharing, Brett, for the Brizzy market and what's happening up there. I'm highly invested in Brizzy firing. I can't wait to see going to see up there at a point in time. And Edward, thanks for investment strategy and how you go about doing it. And a lot of the information around foreign partners sounds like a smart operation you got out there, and you must have some bright people helping you out making these investment decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not myself, it's the team. Yeah.
Nice one. Thanks, guys. I appreciate your time today.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, guys. I feel a lot more informed about the Brisbane property market now after our chat, and we'll keep reporting on it at smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. If you're not yet subscribing to our daily morning newsletter, so the first to know what's happening in property investment right across this great nation, smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. You can also follow us in our portfolio on Smart Property Investment if that's what you like, or check it out on social media, Smart Property HQ Go and check it out. We'll be back again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.
Propertyology regards right now as a very exciting time for investing in Australian real estate. There are some fantastic opportunities that Propertyology can help you take advantage of before buyers re-emerge from their coronavirus cocoons. Propertyology has a national focus. Now more than ever, experience and knowledge are the most valuable currency. Propertyology has that in spades. To find out how Propertyology's multi-award-winning buyers agents can help you prosper, contact them now at propertyology.com.au.